Thirsty for action? Let's crack open the Sunday six-pack.
All right, six-pack went 4-2, as we mentioned last week. Would have gone 5-1 if Indy could get that first and goal deep in, what was it, first and goal at the 5, second and goal at the 2, and somehow they don't score. Brutal, but still a good week. I'm up 5-4. Hit the total. You didn't. You have first pick. Where are you going?
All right, I said it's going to be ugly, and I did consider the Chiefs for what it's worth. We'll talk about that game later, but that line has gone from 2.5, which I would have loved. Anytime I'm going to give Mahomes under a field goal, I'm going there, but it's gone to 3, and then as we're recording this, it jumped to 3.5, which might be related to some Travis Kelce news. But so passing on the Chiefs, and for my first pick, so look, it would have been nice. Hey, we're backing Patrick Mahomes under a field goal. Nope, for my first pick of the Week 2 Sunday six-pack, I am going with the New York Football Jets plus 9.5 against the Dallas Cowboys. Yes, I'm backing Zach Wilson, who I've thrown under the bus countless times. So I like this bet for 2 reasons. I'm showing a little bit of value in the number. I make this just a tad over a touchdown. But there's a couple things I think working in the Jets' favor. Number one, you're catching over a touchdown in the NFL with a super low total, which is always going to be intriguing. And getting this Jets rushing attack and their defense, when you can get this defense, which is showed once again, it might be the best in the NFL, going up against another team that can also make that case. Catching over a touchdown, it's always going to catch my eyes. Additionally, look, Aaron Rodgers is a huge loss. The market has adjusted, close to a touchdown here. I had questions about Aaron Rodgers coming into the year, so we didn't know. It wasn't necessarily prime Aaron Rodgers we've seen over the past 2 seasons. I only have him worth, close to about 4.5 to 5 points this year. There's also just a psychological factor of the Jets. Everyone has written them off, right? Now you're going in on the road into battle with a, superior team. Everyone is saying your season's over. This is it's kind of like you see this in the NBA when you're starting.
The Week 2 Sunday six-pack. I'm going to get pretty ugly myself here and go with the Seattle Seahawks plus 5.5 at the Detroit Lions. The Seahawks team that, what did they do? Just 5 straight 3-and-outs in the second half last week. They were up 13-7, and then it just all went downhill. Still might have tackle issues, but I think this is too many points against this Lion team, even on long rest. The biggest thing for Seattle last week wasn't even their tackles. It was that they couldn't handle Aaron Donald. Damian Lewis, I believe he had a 7.9 PFF pass blocking grade. That might be the lowest grade I've ever seen them give. Aaron Donald got 1 sack, 4 hurries, 5 pressures in total. I believe they all came on Lewis. He just dominated. The Lions, I like, Hutchinson on the edge, but they don't have the same, no one really has the same type of player as Aaron Donald on the interior. So I'm not as worried. And let's not forget Seattle last season, when the hype was kind of building up with Detroit was favored by more than a field goal at home, and Seattle went and rolled up 48 points on them and snuck out 48-45. But Seattle was up most of that, that game was a little, the score wasn't that close. I think Detroit scored late, but I think Seattle still has enough here to keep it close with Detroit, if not win this game. They still have talented players at the skill positions. Geno's still not going to make a ton of mistakes. I thought Seattle was one of the more unlucky teams, and Detroit was one of the luckier teams last week. Our luck rankings agree. This is one of the 4 games with a luck gap of over 100%. And the luck differential in terms of rank between the 2 teams is 24. So, that signifies a pretty high against the spread hit rate right there as it is. But I just look at the Seattle team and I don't see that big of a gap. Even, the tackles, yes, they were, they're solid and they were, for rookies, they exceeded expectations, but let's not act like these are elite tackles or anything like that. And, one of the backups for Seattle came in last week and did fine. I think the issue is more on the interior. I don't think Detroit is going to pose that same kind of issue. And also, Sean McVay, division game last week, all offseason to prepare. It just painted Seattle, I think, in the worst possible light. But this is still a team, I think, that still has some talent, and I still think they can win a shootout in this game against Detroit if they have to. But, Detroit, for all the hype, and, I was on them week 1 against Kansas City, but I mean, you put up 21 points against Kansas City in a
14.
game. Huh? Well, yeah, really, 14 on offense, right? 14. You get handed a lucky pick 6, and that's with Chris Jones out. That's with all offseason to prepare. That's with no one ever having seen film on what you're going to do with Jahmyr Gibbs. The hype. It's just there's too much hype with this Detroit team right now. So let's go Seattle plus 5.5. And if you want some trends, this is week 2. This is classic overreaction week. The teams that looked great, Detroit beats Kansas City. Those teams tend to struggle. And then teams that looked terrible, like Seattle did, tend to do well. So let's see. We have a week 2 dogs off a loss going against a favorite that was a dog in week 1, 47-25 against the spread since 2005, 65%. You have week 2 road teams off a double-digit loss since 2005, 36-21 against the spread, 63%. Week 2 underdogs plus 6 or less that didn't cover in week 1, 64% against the spread since 05 at 58-33. I mean, the trends are endless here. This is how you bet week 2. You find a team that the public is down on or that struggled, that there's not really as big of a gap. I mean, I don't think the Lions should be getting, laying 5.5, 6 against many teams. Not yet anyway. So give me Seattle.
Yeah, another one. Week 2 favorites of over a field goal after winning as a dog in week 1, which applies to the Lions and Bucks this week, are 38.5% over the past 25 years. In week 2, this is the spot. The Seahawks are the spot. I just don't know if I could get there. I mean, I was low on the Seattle team, lower than the market. I was lower than you on them. I mean, you go back to the second half of last year, we started to see the cracks. Like, their only 2 wins were over the Rams backup quarterbacks. By the way, the circle of life in the NFC West, the 49ers own the Rams, who own the Seahawks, who own the 49ers. So that rang true again. But, yeah, and the Lions are off a pretty fluky win. They do have extra rest, but I'm just worried that Seattle might be a fraud. Their D could take a big step back, and Geno was just, a half a season flash in the pan. And you look, and we'll learn a lot this week, because last year they torched the Detroit defense, which, Hutchinson's a stud. Harrison McNeil a potential on the D-line, but the rest of the secondary and linebacker are major questions outside of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who played well against the Chiefs and has a proven track record. But, yeah, you mentioned Lewis, who was awful at guard. But if you're missing both your tackles, it's not like they're all pros, but, Curhan and Forsythe, they're like an undrafted guy, a 7th round guy. They don't have much experience. I mean, they signed Jason Peters, who's 41. But in the first half, you take all those offensive line injuries. The first half, the Seahawks, against the Rams, by the way, the Rams have a horrendous defense. They scored 13 points. They had 10 first downs. They averaged 5.5 yards per play. EPA per play, positive 0.12. The second half, where they didn't have their starting tackles, no points, no first downs, 0.9 yards per play, negative 0.754 EPA per play. I mean, that is horrific. So I agree. Seahawks are the spot. I just think that they might be a fraud. And we might end up keep downgrading them as the season goes on. But we'll see. This is definitely the week 2 spot. So I can't hate on you for this pick. For my second pick and the third overall of the week 3 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Buffalo Bills minus 9.5, we'll call it. Shop around as always. Think you might be able to find an 8.5 or a 9 out there. I think that is one of the overreactions that might be happening from week one is I saw people say Josh Allen is no longer good. He's bad. This is back to what everyone thought. Well, are we just throwing out his entire track record in the NFL? By the way, this is not the first or the last time he will struggle against the Jets. Go back to last year when he looked horrible. He had no touchdowns, 2 interceptions against the Jets, I believe like week 8. And then they lost that fluky game to the Vikings when that game in the 30s in overtime. And then they won like 8 straight. It's okay. He struggled against the Jets. A lot of quarterbacks will do that. Josh Allen is a bit more inconsistent than a Mahomes, and that's why he's not at that level. But he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. This is also one of the best teams in the NFL still, at home, off of a loss, playing a Raiders team coming across the country who, won in the final seconds against a Broncos team that didn't get any pressure the entire game. I think a league low 11% pressure rate when they didn't blitz. And, so Jimmy G was comfortable in a system, hit a couple plays, and ended up scoring 17 points after a late touchdown. The Raiders offense will be okay. I think the Bills defense can do enough here to hold them in check. But it's the Raiders defense, which was going up against Russell Wilson and an offense that just wasn't stretching the field. That's not going to happen here. Their secondary, I don't think, is going to hold up. I think the dam's going to break. And I think the Bills come out in vintage Bills form and blow this game open early and keep their foot on the gas. If you look historically, Josh Allen, 37 of his 53 career regular season wins have been by more than 7 points. Over the past few seasons under McDermott, when the Bills win, they win big because usually you're getting good Josh Allen. So I like the Bills to win this game by double digits. Look, if the Bills win that game against the Jets and the Raiders, don't get that touchdown late, I think the spread is over 10. So I'll happily take 9.5 here and count on a Josh Allen bounce back and a angry Bills double-digit win, which they've done way more times than not in this spot.
Yeah, not only did this just speaks to the Bills' greatness. Not only do they usually win big with Josh Allen and Sean McDermott, that Jet loss by 6 in overtime was their biggest regular season loss since December 12th of 2021. All 3 of their games last year that they lost in the regular season were by 3 points or 3 or less. 2 points to Miami, 3 to the Jets, and 3 to the Vikings. So, yeah, this Bills team is very good. The Jets just are very, very, very good defense. They could come and Diggs had a decent game, and they still shut down Buffalo. So that speaks to the Jets. But yeah, Buffalo, they're going to destroy this Raider D. I think, Right.
Yeah, I'm only worried about Crosby on Spencer Brown a bit. We'll see how.
You have Dawson Knox help out now because you got the 2 tight ends. So
so you're gonna have to help out there, and then there's just with Allen's ability to buy time, especially, there's just no way that this secondary can hold up, in my opinion. So I think the Bills come out early, jump on top of the Raiders, and look, Jimmy G is a good average NFL quarterback, and he can win you games like last week, but he's not capable of keeping up with the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, and I'm not sure why, but people have forgotten that Allen is right up there at the top.
Yeah, and, Russell Wilson really didn't try that defense for whatever reason down the field. I guess that was Sean Payton's grand master plan. Wilson 5-yard average depth of target. So Josh Allen going to be a little different this week. For my second pick, the 4th overall of the week 2 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Atlanta Falcons plus 1.5 at home against the Green Bay Packers. And I have Atlanta as a slight favorite here. So, interesting to me that they're laying points at home. I know Green Bay looked good. You called it. Green Bay destroyed Chicago, but that score is a little bit misleading. 38-20. That our expected score had it 22-19, like a 3-point game. So I think Green Bay, another one of those teams that got a little bit lucky, got a turnover, had some things go right for them. And when you look at this Atlanta team,
have you put your Bears future to rest yet? By the way,
no. I still got a Justin Fields MVP future. It's probably dead, but past also a little different with Atlanta. They're going to be able to put some heavier personnel on the field. Chicago wasn't doing that. I think Tunyon came into that game banged up. Blasingame, they weren't, not really a great option there. But I think Atlanta, heavy personnel, really like what Arthur Smith is doing. He's kind of finding a way for Desmond Ridder to not lose the Falcons games. He went 15 out of 18 because he was just throwing gimmies to the playmakers. And now you have, Drake London, you still have Kyle Pitts kind of waiting to be unleashed. Bijan looked great. Tyler Algier, a guy I loved in fantasy, looked great. So I just think this is a coin flip game that the Green Bay Packers are, favored on the road. I don't like it. Give me the Falcons second straight road game also for the Pack. So give me the Falcons. And again, had that expected score for Green Bay was like 17 points below the total, below their actual total. So that's a spot I want to attack in week 2. And all the same trends I mentioned for Seattle, Detroit apply here. So I won't list them again, but I have 10 60+% trends for the Atlanta Falcons. But bottom line, I just think these two teams are fairly even. I think Atlanta can run on Green Bay, and I don't think they should be laying points on at home.
Yeah, I don't mind this one at all. I love both these teams coming into the year. The Falcons' offensive line, very good run blockers across the board. I mean, I guess Bergeron is the 1 weak piece there. It's still major question marks, but they will commit to the run, and they should have success running on this Packers defense that historically has struggled against the run. Gary was still limited. He was dominant. He was in it for 10 passing snaps and had 5 pressures, which is insane. Quay Walker was great too, which Packers fans love to see, but he did suffer concussion worth watching. But some of the things I like from the Falcons, Onyemata and Bates, 2 of their big acquisitions that we talked about on the defensive side of the ball, they were both great last week. So that should help the defense. There's still not a lot of consistent edge rush, but they now are pretty good in the interior. And they might be able to take advantage of Josh Myers in that aspect. I still have some questions about him and his consistency. And don't forget, the Packers have some injuries. We don't know if Watson will be good to go. And that's important against a Falcons team that does have one really good corner in A.J. Terrell. And then Aaron Jones, and one of the many, hamstring and those type of injuries that we saw last week. We don't know if he's good to go. And he is, when he's on the field, he's just an explosive play waiting to happen. And Dillon just doesn't have that same level of explosiveness, like on the screen passes and in the passing game in particular, but just across the board. So the Packers also aren't at 100% full strength. But yeah, I think the Packers run D did show some promise last week against the Bears, who want to run it a lot, but it's one data point. Game script wasn't really there. And Falcons have a much better D than the Bears, in my opinion. They have a much better offensive line, and they should commit and have success running the ball. So I don't mind this. Great spot here. For my third pick and the 5th overall, the Week 3 Sunday 6-pack. Look, I told you we're going ugly. We're laying 9.5. We're taking 9.5 with Zach Wilson. So let's throw another Wilson in, this time a second favorite. I don't know if I've ever done this, maybe once. But we're going to lay 3.5 with the Denver Broncos at home against the Washington Commanders. And look, I'm scared to death. I need Russell Wilson to win by more than a field goal. But I think this is a really good spot to back the Broncos, who have historically been good early in the season at home in altitude in the first couple weeks of the season. But you're basically laying the same price that you were last week against the Raiders. And I had the Raiders power rated a couple points higher than Washington. And I watched earlier this week, I watched that entire Washington game because Sam Howell took 6 sacks. I'm like, how the hell did he take 6 sacks against this Arizona defense? Last year, J.J. Watt, I think, had like half of their sacks. And he's no longer there, obviously. So I watched the game. Howell was so indecisive. Wasn't even all on the offensive line, which did struggle, but so indecisive, holding the ball way too long. which just led to mistakes. And even when Arizona wasn't generating a pass rush, they were able to get to Hal. And that's important for this Broncos defense, which generated no pressure last week. I expect their defense to come out with a tear on fire after that performance last week. But they don't even need to generate a lot of pressure. Hal, I just don't think he's ready yet. And the market is rating him too highly from what I've seen. And I did like some of the things I saw from the Broncos offense last week, which Peyton installed. He went so much more heavy play action this year than they did last year. A lot of, extra protectors in there. I think they had 6 offensive linemen, a lot more. And Russ was really efficient. Now, the missing piece, there was no explosiveness, but he didn't make mistakes. He was really efficient, just, nickel and diming down the field. That's where potentially Jerry Jeudy comes in. They need him. I don't know if he's going to play, another hamstring guy, but I'm willing to take the risk that there's a chance that he's in there and he can help take the top off of defenses and provide that spark for the explosive plays, because I really like the scheme. And this is a big coaching advantage too, right? And I'll take Sean Payton over Ron Rivera any day of the week. And I expect Payton to make some tweaks. Hopefully you get Jeudy in there. And, because the Broncos have a lot of injuries, I have to say. I mean, Dulcich is also banged up, and you already lost Patrick, and there's some injuries on the defensive side of the ball. But I just think it's a good bounce-back spot for the Broncos, and I'm just not a believer in this Washington team after what I saw last week. I just don't think Hal is ready to go into a very hostile environment and not make mistakes, which could decide this game. So I think we're getting the Broncos cheap here. Probably the first and last time I'll lay over a field goal with Russell Wilson, but let's give it a go. Broncos -3.5.
Yeah, I was thinking about the under for this game. I don't trust Howe either, but that Bronco D, I don't know. Like, it should be better when you look at the talent on paper. And I mean, Damari Mathis just got completely destroyed last week. I think he gave up 8 of 9 catches, 2 touchdowns, both touchdowns. So maybe they figure out something, but Stearns just went on IR. So I don't know. I might still bet this under because I do agree.
Stearns, they signed Jackson they re-signed Jackson, so it's not as big of a deal. They were hoping for big things from Stearns, which hurts, but they do still have Jackson there to go along with Simmons on the back end. The Broncos they generated no pressure at all. Zero pressure.
It's like, don't they have Gregory and
Gregory did nothing. He chirped all week and never showed up. Allen did nothing. So I'm hoping that and expecting those guys to bounce back a little bit. But I think that Howe is just his, and he's always had this issue where he just tends to hold the ball too long, even dating back to college, and you just can't do that in the NFL. But I expect a better effort from the Denver pass rushers. If we don't get it, though, this week, it's definitely concerning because, that was a poor effort outside of, the always reliable Surtain and Simmons.
Yeah, Surtain is great. That Damari Mathis he kind of ruined their defense, and that with the no pressure. But that's the way you play the games, and now they'll have a chance to make some adjustments. But I did think it was interesting that Russ had a 5.0 ADOT. I mean, that is like half of his career average. So that's just interesting to me. I do think, if Jeudy comes back, it's still probably going to be short passes, just, relying on a guy like Jeudy to do some things.
His yak is going to be is big too. But I think Wilson, like if you look at his pass chart, I mean, there's nothing downfield. It was bad, but that was some of it. Like he didn't make any mistakes. It was an efficient outing. They were in position to win the game, and then the defense let them down. But I like the heavier use of play action, and you just got to get Russ into just comfortable throws, and because he's just not the same guy that he was. He can't do what made him great anymore. So I think this is Peyton's solution, and I like it, but you also have to add in some explosiveness, which Jeudy would certainly help with. But I'll trust Peyton here to make the necessary adjustments at home. Coaching mismatch put this over the edge for me.
All right, for my third pick and the 6th overall of the week to Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Chicago Bears plus 2.5. See if you can find a 3. The 2.5 is at plus 100 at BetMGM, so you could probably find a 3 plus minus 120 or something like that. But this is another one of these games. I already talked about it where, yes, Chicago got outplayed by Green Bay, but it wasn't to the extent that the score showed. And by the same token, even though we were both on the Bucks got a little bit lucky last week against Minnesota. So again, just this is week 2. We're still just trying to find spots, and another two teams I still have pretty evenly rated. The Bears. I do think that there's more to their offense than what they showed last week. Green Bay does have a little bit more talent on defense than maybe the Bucks have, because I don't know, like this Bucks, I think the Bucks are good on defense, but then some of like watching them last week, there were guys running open, and I just felt like the Vikings left a lot of points on the field. And I think you said they probably should have had like 28 points or something like that, and I totally agree. Justin Fields, he's going to be able to do some things off script, which Cousins and the Vikings weren't able to do last week. I think you get a bigger more of a contribution from DJ Moore this week. Last week couldn't expect too much going against Jair, and this Bucks team, it still projects to be one of the worst in the league. You still have Baker Mayfield, so now you're getting the Bears as an underdog. You're getting the Bucks as a favorite. Baker probably is going to make some mistakes, and I just trust Chicago here to make some plays and kind of rebound from last week. Just a classic buy low, sell high spot on two teams that, most people expect to be bad, but I have the Bears ahead actually of the Bucks. So, last week didn't really change much for me with the Bucks, and the Bears, little concerning, but I'm still gonna.
All you have to say here is you're buying low and selling high, which I agree with. This is the spot. But I was super low on the Bears, lower than you on the Bears coming into the year, and I was a little higher than the market on the Bucks. At 3, I agree. It's Bears or nothing. A couple things concern me though. Obviously, the Bears D is horrendous. Jordan Love looked like an All-Pro and didn't have his number 1 receiver. And my main question is, and also the Bears' offensive line was a disaster, and the Bears predictably got no pressure at all. They did not address that. And by the way, there are 2 big offseason acquisitions at linebacker, meaningless. They did nothing. But they got no pressure. I think they had 4 or 5 total pressures. Like, I think Rashawn Gary, who played 10 passing snaps, had more pressures than the Bears as a team. They just didn't generate any pressure at all. How do you get Baker Mayfield to make those mistakes? You got to get pressure on him. So, otherwise he can throw an accurate ball, and they have some decent receivers who are going to go up against horrendous secondary, which is also a little banged up now. But on principle, just buy low, sell high with this number. Shop around for that 3. I think you have the right side here. I just can't get myself there, just because I was so low on the Bears, and I just don't know how they're going to generate pressure. But at 3 or above, it's definitely Bears or nothing.
You got to fade. I know it's not a pressure spot, but I got to fade Baker here. He is 11-23 in his career as a favorite. That is 32% against the spread. And he's currently on an 0-8 streak. He's failed to cover his last 8 games as a favorite, dating back to October 3rd, 2021. That was the last time Baker Mayfield covered as a favorite, way back when that was like 3-4 teams ago, a 14-7 win as a 1-point dog against the Vikings. So yeah, it's just
fading Baker as a favorite. It's never a bad idea. And I mentioned that trend earlier, 38.5% for favorites of 3 or more after winning as a dog the week before, which just speaks to the overreaction. This team won as a dog, and it's definitely the spot. Oh, and by the way, Ryan Poles after the game signed another linebacker, so we'll see what the Bears can do with another linebacker. But that'll do it for our Sunday 6-pack. As expected, week 2. Ugly as always, just how we like it.
I'll recap. Stuck has the Jets plus 9.5 at the Cowboys, the Broncos minus 3.5 at home against the Commanders, and the Bills minus 9.5 at home against the Raiders. I have the Seahawks plus 5.5 at Detroit, the Falcons plus 1.5 at home against the Pack, and the Bears plus 2.5. See if you can get the 3, but for the contest, we'll go 2.5 at Tampa Bay.
By the way, another good thing for my picks is that if the Jets don't cover, we get to rip Zach Wilson. If the Bills don't cover, I get to rip our producer. Matt Mitchell's a diehard Bills fan. And if the Broncos don't cover as a favorite with Russell Wilson, I get to rip myself. I'll take accountability there.
All right. That's going to do it for the Week 2 Sunday 6-pack.